When I grew up, when I sat down and I had to do a big report like this, what we would do is we would go to the library and we would look at the encyclopedias. We would also look at primary sources if we could get our hands on, a book that was directly related to what we were studying. And then I would sit down and I would get my parents' Smith Corona typewriter out, an old brown typewriter, and I would hit the keys, and I'd have this kind of onion skin paper that I would roll into the typewriter. And if I made a mistake, you could put in this kind of white cartridge that you could white out with your mistakes and then put the black cartridge back in. And when I was in high school, when I was doing relatively big reports, that's what I would do. So I didn't really know how to work with a computer. And then when I went to college, my freshman year, which was 1984, the fall of 1984, that's when the Apple Macintosh came out. And I convinced my grandparent, or actually I convinced my parents, but my grandmother paid for it. She spent $1,000 on an Apple Macintosh, and the Apple Macintosh was, it was about that big, and it was just it was a box. And then the front side was a screen, and the screen was probably, I don't know, 10 inches by 8 inches, and we used it for word processing. So that's primarily what it would do. You could type up your reports, and we had these dot matrix printers where it would spit out your report, and it looked pretty bad because there are all these dots that made up the letters. But that was high tech. I mean, that was high technology. We were excited to play some simple games, but we mostly used it for word processing. And that process of using computers, using technology to write reports, do research, that has just accelerated since 1984. So I see my son, who's a freshman in high school now, and the way he gathers information to do reports, and what he has at his fingertips is, exponentially larger than what I had 30 years ago. So for me, I would say that's number one as a generationally defining moment. My generation has seen gathering information from a very, if you wanted to get at a source, if you were at a university, you had a lot of resources. There were kind of centers of knowledge. But for me, out in the middle of nowhere, I didn't have Google at my fingertips. So that's something that has changed drastically since when I was your age.